December 14th, 1972. In the silence of the Taurus-Littrow Valley, Apollo 17 prepared for ascent. Eugene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt had spent nearly 3 days exploring the lunar surface, conducting experiments, collecting samples, and leaving behind the last human tracks ever pressed into lunar dust. Apollo 17 was the final lunar landing mission of the Apollo program. And when the lunar module Challenger rose from the moon on December 14th, it marked the last time human beings departed from another world. At that moment, no one could know that this departure would become a goodbye, lasting more than half a century. For decades, that final ascent defined the edge of human exploration. The moon remained visible in Earth's sky, but unreachable by human hands. Generations grew up hearing about Apollo as if it belonged to a finished age. The world changed. Computers transformed civilization. The internet connected continents. Space stations were built in orbit. Private companies entered the space industry. Yet through all of it, one fact remained unchanged. No human being returned to the moon, and no crew traveled into deep space the way Apollo astronauts once had. Then, after more than 50 years, history moved again. April 1st, 2026, Kennedy Space Center. The countdown reaches 0 and Artemis II rises into the sky aboard NASA's Space Launch System. Fire floods the launch pad. Inside Orion are 4 astronauts: Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen. This is not a mission to orbit Earth. This is not another station flight. Artemis II is the first crewed deep space mission of the Artemis program and the first human journey toward the moon in more than 50 years. That is what makes Artemis II so important. It is not merely a symbolic return. It is the test that decides whether human beings can once again travel into deep space with a modern system and come home safely. Orion, the spacecraft carrying the crew, is designed for missions far beyond Earth orbit. NASA has described it as a roughly 10-day mission around the moon and back, using a free return trajectory that loops around the moon and naturally bends the spacecraft's path back toward Earth. The crew of Artemis II enters the realm that only Apollo astronauts had ever known. For the first time in generations, human beings are once again moving through deep space toward the moon. Then comes one of the most historic moments of the entire mission. On April 6, 2026, during the lunar flyby phase, Artemis II surpasses the Apollo 13 record for the farthest distance ever traveled by humans from Earth. NASA states that the previous record, set by Apollo 13 in 1970, was about 248,655 miles from Earth. Artemis II pushes beyond that mark and ultimately reaches a maximum distance of about 252,756 miles from Earth. That means this mission does not simply revisit the lunar frontier, it extends it. Artemis II becomes the most distant human spaceflight in history, and this is where the emotional power of the story grows. Apollo 17 was the final mission of one age. Artemis II is not repeating it exactly. The Artemis crew does not land on the moon. They do something different. They prove that humanity can return to deep space with a new generation of spacecraft, guidance, communications, life support, thermal protection, and mission operations. They prove that the road back to the moon is real. As Orion swings around the moon, the crew witnesses views that only a handful of humans in all history have ever seen. The near side, the far side, Earthrise beyond the lunar horizon, the blackness of deep space surrounding a distant world that shaped human imagination for thousands of years. They remind humanity that the moon is no longer locked inside old archive footage from the 1960s and 1970s. It is once again part of the living present. What makes Artemis II especially powerful is that it arrives in a completely different world from the one Apollo left behind. Apollo was born in the Cold War, in a race defined by urgency, prestige, and geopolitical competition. Artemis is part of a broader long-term vision. It is designed not just to touch the moon, but to establish a pathway back to sustained human operations in lunar space, and eventually farther destinations. Artemis II matters because it is the first crude proof that this new architecture works. Without Artemis II, there is no confidence for the missions that follow. Without Artemis II, the future remains theoretical. With Artemis II, the future becomes operational. That is why Apollo 17 still matters in this story. Not because it deserves equal time, but because it gives Artemis II its emotional scale. Apollo 17 is the silence. Artemis II is the sound returning. Apollo 17 is the closing of the first lunar chapter. Artemis II is the opening of the second. The last ascent from the moon in 1972 gains a completely new meaning only when placed beside Orion's re-entry in 2026. One mission was the end of human lunar exploration for more than 50 years. The other is the proof that the absence is over. And finally, on April 10, 2026, Artemis II comes home. Orion slams into Earth's atmosphere after nearly 10 days in deep space. Plasma surrounds the capsule. Communications blackout gives way to parachute deployment. NASA's return timeline noted drogue parachutes deploying near 22,000 feet and the main parachutes opening near 6,000 feet before splashdown off the coast of San Diego. At 5:07 p.m. Pacific time, the crew returns safely to Earth. That moment matters far beyond mission success. It confirms that humanity can once again leave Earth, travel toward the moon, survive the journey, and return from deep space. So if Apollo 17 was the day humanity left the moon, Artemis II is the day humanity truly returned to deep space. That is the real connection between them. Apollo 17 left behind the final footprints of the first lunar age. Artemis II brought back the first crew from lunar space in more than half a century. And that is why Artemis II may one day be remembered as one of the most important missions in modern history. Because it did more than fly around the moon. It ended one of the longest pauses in exploration ever recorded. For more than 50 years, humanity looked at the moon as a place it had once visited. After Artemis II, humanity can look at it again as a place it is preparing to return to.